So welcome to the last episode of the podcast in this space. The move is this weekend. It's just a few days away. And this is the last thing I'm going to sit down in front of the camera and record before all of the last few pieces get packed up and put away and moved to our new location, to our new home, to my new studio space. And it's kind of a special one for me today because it highlights what I consider to be sort of the three main pillars of how I work, how I learn, how I practice, how I navigate my career, essentially, from the standpoint of music and bass playing. And I think I've probably always known this subconsciously, but never really put it together as, it's these three like really specific things. And it didn't come to my mind until very recently. All the physical copies of the new book, How to Transcribe, showed up for me to sign. All of those pre-orders finally went out, so many hundreds of days after the pre-sale was launched, but they're all out there. They're all on their way to you. And it was amazing. The people who had purchased more than one book at a time, that it was twinned so often. So many people, hundreds of people bought the transcription book. They also bought the sight reading book at the same time. I was like, that's interesting. And I had to order more copies. I didn't really think about it at the time, but as I was signing them and packaging them up, I was, it's a big task. It took 2 or 3 days to get everything signed and packaged up and get it out to the post office. And it gives you a lot of time to think while I'm printing labels and signing books. And I started to think, these are two really important pillars of who I am as a musician and how I've managed to navigate my way through so many different situations throughout my career. And then, of course, our last book was the basis book of scales and arpeggios, kind of my version of the Hanon that I'd grown up using as a young musician. And it struck me that these are actually the three main pillars of what I do in music. It's kind of, scales and arpeggios technique, the raw sort of fundamental data for all musicians, actually, not just bass players. It's the faster access to music via being able to read standard notation. The book is called Bass Player's Guide to Sight Reading. Is it actually sight reading? Sight reading is so specific. It's on sight. It's something you haven't seen before. It's something you are really you're picking up a book and reading it for the first time. And is your comprehension of that language good enough to read all the words, or in our case as musicians, the notes, and be able to express what is written on the page musically to the people around you, to the audience, on the recording session, whatever it might be. So it's, the book is called Bass Player's Guide to Sight Reading. It's maybe should have been called, that was really for want of a better title, maybe should have been called something a little more nerdy, like Bass Player's Guide to Better Standard Notation Comprehension or something. Because it really goes through all the stages. Then you don't necessarily have to be able to read on sight, having never seen the music before, to be able to gain faster access to music. And I think that's what reading to me is all about. Yes, I do it exceptionally well. Yes, I sight read. Yes, I can show up in the studio and do that on a very high level. And that is something that is not... It's not an innate skill has always been readily available to me, and it's not something that stays with me unless I maintain it. So I actually do work on that really hard to this day, even though I'm not a first call studio musician who goes and does movie dates all the time, and my musical life as a bass player doesn't revolve entirely around reading music at sight, having never seen it before. But that is a skill I like to have, because when sessions and studio work does come up, I like to be maintain that facility and be known for someone who can walk into basically any situation and read almost anything, at least keep up with those great musicians around me that are also probably going to struggle with the same little thing here and there. There are those exceptional savant type people who really can read absolutely anything. And today on the podcast, I'm going to roast myself by picking out two exercises. One's this Afro-Cuban thing, and one is a thing in 7. They're two exercises from the book, and I'm going to roast myself by playing them. Obviously, I wrote them. They're in the book, but this book came out some years ago. I haven't looked at these two exercises in many years. I'm going to roast myself for you guys, put my money where my mouth is, and read them down to make a little example of that. And of course, the third pillar, the most recent book, How to Transcribe, that's really the underlying really where all my vocabulary comes from, and my inspiration and my sort of will to play, to carry on, to do it, to be inspired every day. Ooh, I'm just hearing the monitors for the first time. That is pretty aggressive in the ears. Let me turn that down for myself. It's a little bit over the top what I'm hearing. You know, anything you hear me playing, any type of vocabulary like that, comes from having listened, having immersed myself in the process, in the music, and repeated it many tens of thousands of times. Yes, I have created exercises out of it. That's why the Basis Book of Scales and Arpeggios is here. Not only is this sort of a theory thing of like actual like encyclopedia of all the scales that are available, there are exercises in there, stuff that I do all the time to maintain my technique. But I thought it'd be fun to roast myself a little bit on this episode. Go out with a bang or a whimper from this studio location. I don't know. We're about to find out. Obviously, a big part of the sight reading book is that it comes with these charts to read, this standard notation, and a ton of play alongs, which I have queued up right here. And I pulled out this Afro-Cuban chart, like this salsa thing, mainly because it's quite typical of what I might sit down to read in kind of a studio situation. And I say studio situation because maybe, obviously, what you're about to hear is quite stripped down. It's a montuno and some percussion, and I'm going to play the bass with it, right? That is as a practice tool. This chart is something I feel would be typical of something. Maybe there's a big band on top, maybe there's a lot more instrumentation, and what you're about to hear is the rhythm section part, but it is quite typical of a written bass part, as opposed to somebody handing you a sheet with a bunch of chords on it where you have to have the vocabulary of that style and improvise essentially over those chord changes, your bass part. This is more directed. This is more specific, more arranged, more composed. This is something quite typical of a session with brass, with horns, perhaps a singer, who knows. Let's give it a rundown and then maybe talk about it afterwards. Let's see if I can actually play it or not. And I'll give myself an honest grade, I guess, afterwards. Here we go. Okay, well, look at that. That's a mistake I'd hope not to make anywhere, gig or studio. As it was counting off, I looked down, I was like, oh, the freaking reverb's still on from what I was playing before, and I went to stamp on it. There's a cable hanging, there's chaos in here. There's a cable hanging in the way, and I hit the wrong button, and I went to the even bigger reverb. So let's take that again. Full start, I'll take one mulligan. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I believe that cycles, that track is about 4 minutes long. So I think it's just on a loop, so you can practice with it. I'd love to play that 3 or 4 times. And notation-wise, I think I hit every note. So I'd give myself a passing grade on that. I was feeling pretty relaxed and comfortable with it. It's not, as you can see, I'll put it up on the screen. As you can see, it's not that dense in terms of the notes. And if you understand this music, if you have a little bit of an idea about how the rhythms work and of Cuban music in general, you'll notice that it follows quite a formulaic, rhythmic pattern and layout as it moves through the changes. And the changes aren't that complicated also. So it's definitely, I wouldn't say it's a beginner chart, but it's definitely not advanced by any stretch of the imagination. Maybe we would call this intermediate. What I was managing to do whilst reading it, and I will point out quickly before I get to that point, is that I'm not just reading the notation. There's also the intro, which is 4 bars, but that's 4 times. So that's a direction that I have to be aware of. Then there is in bar 9, 10, 11, 12. In bar 12, there's a D, this D right here, in parentheses, because that, on the first repeat, does go back to back to bar 5. But moving on, you wouldn't, because we're going to change to the 4 chord, we're going to go to G minor. You don't want to hit that D on 4 and hold it over. So the parentheses is essentially saying like, hey, we're going on, use this the first time, probably not the second time. So I'm scanning ahead to see where I'm going and what makes sense musically. And now I've lost my train of thought, and I was about to make a point. Yes, what I was actually able to think about and experiment with, because I was comfortable reading the notes. That just happens to be where I'm at with my reading. I'm comfortable reading the notes. I have a feel for the music. So I was actually able to add in a few other things, not note-wise, but think about, okay, which area, which range, what part of the range am I going to play this in? Am I going to play it up here? I have to drop down to hit these notes. It's traditional 4-string tuning here. Yes, I'm playing a 5-string bass. Please ignore the instrument and listen to the music. I'm playing everything in 4-string range right here, as is the whole book is around 4-string, standard 4-string. So I'm thinking, okay, what sound am I going to make? Am I going to palm mute it? Or am I going to play a little bit more open? Wasn't sure. I was experimenting a little bit. You can rewind the video and see that my technique changes a little bit. The sound changes a little bit in places, and where I play it. Like, do I play it 10th fret D up? Or do I play it down here on the 5th fret, the D on the A string up? There's a kind of a big difference between that and this. A little bit brighter when you play it in the around the 5th fret on the A string as opposed to the 10th fret on the E string. So I'm conscious of those things as well. And do I want to palm mute it, or do I want to play it open? Am I going for that sort of Cuban baby bass thing? It's all faking it as far as I'm concerned, because in the traditional sense of this music, I'm not playing the right instrument, and that baby bass, that old Ampeg bass or whatever, would be the way to go. And I have that sound in my head, and I have so many amazing players. I mean, that comes back to how these are the 3 pillars, and these 3 pillars go together, because I'm drawing upon all the transcription stuff at this point. I've got my reading together. The chart isn't that complicated, and I'm able to be in a relaxed enough place to think about, whoa, what should this music sound like? How do I best serve this? Who have I listened to before? Whose sound I love? And where do I want to take this? So there's all options. There's so many layers and levels, and you take the elevator and go up and up and up and up and up until you sort of max yourself out. But those are the kinds of things I'm conscious of, and ultimately serving the music no matter what. Now, I did say I was going to roast myself a bit. That was not so much of a roast, but I think the next one I picked out will be a little bit more roasty because it's in 7. I haven't played. Damn. I'm like sneaking a look to the computer right now, just trying to look ahead because there are a lot more notes in this one. Let me get a feel for the tempo. Like, these are all things I'm trying to put myself in the position of. I'm in the studio, the copyist has just handed out the music and put it on the stand, and the conductor or the producer, whoever, the drummer, is about to count off the tune. Right now, I'm going to give myself Okay, so I'm going to give myself the quarter note at least. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2. Apparently I had a tabla sample in there. Okay, so I've got the tempo in my head. I'm going to give myself a few seconds before I actually read it. And I'm going to look at maybe the rhythm of the first bar, so I know there are some things coming up. This is all in 4-string range. I'm not going to use the C string. I'm only going to use E, A, D, and G. And we are going to give this a go. I don't know what sound I want. Do I want to go on the back pickup? I can't remember anything about this piece of music, which is a good thing for the purpose of this example. And for those who have the book and are following along, this is lesson 55, reading in 7/4. Good luck to me, I guess. Let's see how my reading is in 7 these days. I'm sure I'm about to expose a few holes in it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. One more go, see if I can get it better second time. Okay, I give myself the first pass, maybe a B, maybe a B plus on the second. I did repair the mistake I made as I was playing it. See, here we go. This is how the sausage is made. As I was playing it, these were the things that were going through my mind. I was feeling really confident. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bars. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And as soon as I got to the end of bar 5, I realized I was scanning ahead, and I realized for what was coming, in order to play that in the most comfortable position with the best fingering, I was already out of position. And in that split second, going from like bar 5 to bar 6, I didn't have the time or the skills or the wherewithal to adjust, unfortunately. So where we hit so that now I'm playing that in a position that feels really comfortable. And I think the first time I did it, I got I was playing up here, and I should have just gone there. I should have just stayed all the way up there and not dropped down. It was a sound thing. I would think I wanted to play a little brighter. I wanted to play down there instead of up there. So yeah, a few conflicting things occurred mid-flow and kind of threw me out. But actually, I was happy that I got the more notey parts, which was and it's quite melodic. Of course, I wrote it, so some of these things they fall under my fingers quite well because they're part of my own vocabulary. So it's not a true roast, even though, like I said, you trust me or not, I did say, like, I haven't played this for some years, probably since I made the videos for this book, which is some years ago already now. During the pandemic, I believe we released this. So it's definitely been some time. Like I said, yeah, maybe a B minus the first time around, B plus or A minus the second time, I don't know. But as I got to the end of it, I was like, okay, I'm already seeing other musicians in the studio. Maybe there's a horn section. Maybe it's just 5 or 6 people. I don't know. But I'm already, the sense memory is kicking in, and I can probably predict where everyone in the room is kind of going, oh, we could do that better. So I'm guessing there would be another take on that, an opportunity to play it a second time. It's quite rare to have a producer or conductor or composer who's just like smashing through things that won't do second takes. But at the same time, if you're doing more than 2 takes, you are probably holding, and it's your fault. You probably shouldn't be there, and you're probably holding everyone up, and nobody likes that. So I would say 1 take is fantastic, 2 takes is acceptable. 3 takes, either it's so ridiculously hard, because of course I've been on sessions where it's 17, 18, 19 takes. Like there's some things that are so hard that it really takes time to make it happen. But if you're doing, I wouldn't call this particularly simple, but it's not on the epic end of the spectrum either. So if you're doing things that are more cues and filler music and, sweetener and stuff like that, then 1, maybe 2 takes is all you need when you're in a room full of like serious readers. Anyway, we're getting off into the weeds there a little bit. That's anecdotal information about professional studio sessions here in LA or back in New York or wherever I've been in the studio, London, all over the place. Those are the things in my experience that I'm thinking in my head, oh yeah, right, I've been there hundreds of times, and that's probably what would happen on something like this if there were any mistakes. Of course, speaking bass-wise, if you're DI'd, you have the option to go back and fix things, punch things. If you don't want to hold up the band, that's actually a good point when it comes to reading. Again, a thing about being relaxed and about being able to scan ahead and also retain some information about the take. What I want to be able to do for a conductor, producer, composer, band leader, artist, whoever it is to be able to, at the end of a take, be like, okay, bar 53, if we want to use this take, bar 53, I have a note I got to fix, or the second time ending of this thing, if it's a song form kind of thing, like just be able to retain the places that you felt could be better if that's the take the person in charge wants to use. So I have a pretty good grasp on being able to do that. I'll be able to go back and give specific notes, like actual, not just general notes, but like there's a D to an E flat here that we could fix, specific bar numbers, that kind of thing. That's a really useful skill to have on a session. And you never know, maybe more than one person made a clam there, and it's not you that ends up speaking up, and you get to do that bar anyway because somebody else made a mistake there. Just a general awareness whilst reading is a really useful skill to have. So that was my little roast for the day. I would definitely, I've definitely been thinking about, like I said, these 3 pillars this week, and also how I want to move forward with them, how important they are to me. I think I would actually quite like to do a little more studio work than I currently do in LA. The older my daughter gets and going through like massive growth and development periods, I want to be sort of away from home less. So working in the studio in town is one way to stay at home. So that's something I was just thinking about in the back of my mind in general. And maintaining the sight reading thing is really, really useful for that. And I'm happy that I really enjoy doing it. Like I said, it was not an innate skill that I just had, naturally available to me. I'm very good at it and have done it for a long time as a byproduct of coming from a classical background, coming from, albeit a treble clef classical guitar background. But when it comes to rhythm, when it comes to dynamics, and your note recognition, all that stuff, I can actually read just as well in treble clef as another byproduct of that. I can read in treble clef just as well as I can in bass clef. Not actually that much of a useful skill when you're a bass player. Although when there are complicated passages and I know the composer or the arranger or the orchestrator or something, I'll say, hey, by the way, if you want me to play that, throw it in treble clef. We'll get through the session way easier if it's like super high rather than just tons and tons of ledger lines, because they can be a little bit of a drag sometimes if it's sort of relentless. But again, it's a very rare occurrence that happens. And in general, I'm reading in bass clef and I'm reading not crazily complicated things. And again, going back to the sight reading thing, when I look back on my career so far of over 30 years, the amount of times I've actually had to I was going to say, actually had to make a living purely from reading is very rare. It's a component of lots of music I've had to play, but when it actually being the main thing is not that common. That's a product of the type of work I do, the type of music I play, of course. And maybe if I work a little more in the studio in LA and do more of those kind of sessions and movies and soundtracks and that kind of thing, cues, then that will become more of a thing. And hey, the skill will get more polished, and I'll have more stories to tell as well, which I love. It's all about the stories at the end of the day. And I think with the other two pillars, with the scales, with the pure technique stuff, I want to lean into that a little more. Not because I want to be able to play faster, louder, whatever it is, but because I know there's some improvement I can make even after 30 years. Who am I kidding? There's so much improvement I can make, especially after 30 years, that I should and want and need to make in my playing. I'm kind of getting into this 3-pillar thing of, and that's like a better vehicle for me. It gives me a little bit of a better focus. I was like, I've got these 3 things to focus on. And each of those 3 things obviously can be so varied, because literally open any book of music and it could be Mahler or Stravinsky, or it could be Gonzalo Rubalcaba or Joshua Redman, or so. It just could be anything, right? So that's an amazingly varied lane to get into. The scales, the arpeggios, the technique, the theory stuff, that encompasses a lot of stuff for me. You've heard me talk about Neo-Riemannian triadic transformation theory recently, which I'm crazy about. That falls squarely in that category, I think, of fundamental technique, which breeds harmony and et cetera. And then the transcription thing is probably the thing I've fallen off the wagon most on lately, just because of time. And I would like to get back into that more, but have it be focused to the point where I'm doing something that's meaningful and realistic. Like I'm not sitting here transcribing entire Chris Potter solos, which I did for you guys in the book, by the way, a couple of them which are epic, and some Matheny, and there's all kinds of stuff in there which is just some great live jazz solos in the transcription book. Anyway, I should probably just do more of that as well. Playing, maybe that's the 4th pillar, is to sort of ignore all of it, or try and ignore all of it, not get too wrapped up in the analytics and the schedule, and not put too much pressure on myself, and just get on and play and enjoy what comes out and develop what comes out. But having those 3 pillars, 3 foundations to always, to never run out of stuff to work on. I don't ever want to read a comment or hear anything from anyone. It's like, man, I don't know what to practice. Oh my word. Everyone, and everyone I know as well, like all of my heroes have a laundry list of things they still want to work on and practice. And that some of the people, they're in their 60s, 70s, they'll never get to half of it, because it is many lifetimes of work if you really love it, which I do, and I know my heroes do, and it's always fascinating to hear, like, from Victor Wooten or John Patitucci, or you name it, like incredible bass players, Tim LaFave, people that I worship their musical ability and their output. And you can get lost in, like, well, they're just operating on this level and they're there and they're all set, and inside I know all of them are like, just, oh man, what's the next thing? What can I work on next? What are my 3 pillars? Which are the 3 lanes I want to get into now? They all have those questions and those desires and that sort of drive and willpower to get up in the morning and do the work because they love it so much. And I think that's probably the most inspiring part about any hero I've ever had, is when I've been fortunate enough to meet them, sometimes become friends with them, and get to have those types of conversations with them. It always comes back down to kind of one common thread, is that they all love the work. And not the work in the sense of the touring or the recording or this, that, but the work of learning music, of assimilating vocabulary, of being able to express ideas more freely. And perhaps that's man, you know what? That's a good sentiment to end on, where we close out. I'll quickly plug these three together because I put a bundle together. I put like this called the Bass Mastery course or whatever. So, thinking of these three books more as a course than as three individual books. Like these three really important pillars. Digitally, I bundled them up so you can get all three. I'll link it below. You can get all three at a slight discount. If you're interested in really like having like three things, when you sit down to practice, you're like, I've got three really distinct things to look at and to work on. You can ask yourself, hey, which of these three things is a weakness for me right now? Okay, maybe I'll lean into that a little bit more. I know where my weaknesses are. Only you can answer where yours are. And maybe these three books will help you along that journey, help explain some steps to help you improve. And I hope for you that you love doing the work even 5% as much as I do, because it's an amazing feeling. And even in the midst of the chaos of moving house and doing all this stuff and being on the road and making videos and podcasts and all that kind of stuff, the other thing never goes away. I'm always here when the camera is off, which is, as you know, most of the time the camera is off. This is what I'm doing in every spare second of music time I get for myself. These are the kinds of things I'm working on. So that's it. This is goodbye to this space, and I'll see you in a totally new room. Not immediately, because we've got to move in and unpack, but within the next 10 days or so, I hope to be able to have the camera set up and say hi and share some thoughts and spend some more time with you. So appreciate you spending all this time over the years with me. I really, really appreciate that very much. And I'll see you guys on the other side.